Welcome to episode 3 of Comply or Die with Kimberly Smith and Charlotte Walton of Silo Compliance Systems. Today we are going to discuss the risk-based approach in a compliance system, as well as the compliance community and training. So the risk-based approach is the best way I can explain it to people who are not compliance people. It's being able to create your own compliance procedures, your processes, your checklist, even though I hate the word checklist.
Yeah.
But it's able to apply your own procedures to that fit your client base or your customer base, your product, who you're serving, and how you're serving it. An example that I like to use is that you could have a law firm, asset manager, broker dealers. You can have 2 law firms on the same street in the same country, but one law firm is dealing with international clients and the other law firm is dealing only with the local community, whether it's family law or property, buying people, the local people buying property or the local businesses coming to that law firm for local legal advice versus an international law firm is obviously dealing with more international clients and cross-border transactions, and usually much bigger transaction deals. So they would not apply the same compliance procedures. Did they explain that to you when you were when you were doing the ACAMS training?
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's foundational to AML compliance
It is.
and the AML program, obviously. Yeah. So, RBA, I think, was like one of the acronyms that they always covered at the beginning of every of those sessions. And talking about, not just, generally like, here's what the 4 pillars of compliance are. It was, here's the basis on the principles from Basel, Wolfberg. I don't know if Egmont did. I'm sure they did. And, FATF, like there's so many other, organizations, institutions that have, here's the pillars, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5. The foundation, the thing that was always mentioned every single time, risk.
Risk-based approach.
Risk-based approach, risk management, risk mitigation, risk assessment, one of those things. Always had RISK, in there because and really what it is, it's a custom approach. It's a personalized, customized, configurable. That's really what it is. But because you can operate 2 wildly different firms, even 2 similarly based firms, the same way. And it's moving away from
saying
that.
You cannot?
You cannot. Yes, you can't. You can't do that because it just doesn't work. People are different. Firms are different. The people running those firms are different.
You're going to have more friction between, depending on the which way you're going. It's going to cause friction with one set of customers versus the other.
Yeah.
An international customer might be a bit more used to having to, our client, might have be more accustomed to being asked for bank statements or financial statements or something like that, whereas the small business person, won't have that. So if you're applying a tick box approach.
Exactly. It's that moving away from that.
Yeah.
Oh, all I have to do is comply. I just have to make sure I have this on hand in case I'm like liable for this thing. And it's not liability, it's risk.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
I can remember when I first started, it was very prescriptive.
Exactly.
I don't even think they had, the FATF had applied the risk-based approach or recommended the risk-based approaches. I can't remember. I'll have to look back.
Yeah.
But it was one of those situations where, we were told you must have A, B, C, D. And we were trying to apply that in every single case. And it is impossible to do that. Another thing that I didn't like is we were being told, this is again in the mid-2000s, you have to have a copy of a bank statement. Or a letter of reference from their bank. Now, I deal with like the big banks, the Bank of America. Who in the world is going to, that organization is going to write me a letter of reference?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
So I remember at one point going, if I can't meet the regulatory requirement, these requirements, say, how can my customers do that? Or, our clients do that? And then they would say, okay, we'll send a copy of the bank statement. And it was just one of those situations. First, I felt that was very intrusive. And second of all, it's like, well, what's a bank statement going to do other than I mean, obviously it was supposed to be part of an address verification. But another request that I've often heard is people saying, well, you got to get copies of their financial statements. And part of me is like, well, am I supposed to be a forensic accountant now? Am I supposed to be looking at these financial statements and looking for, accounting fraud? Because that's way out of my league. That's not going to help me.
Yeah.
So trying to find, again, it depends on the level of who your clients are, what industry you're in, with what you will be requesting from your clients.
And that's only a small portion. I mean, it's most of probably, one of those pillars, like one of the big pieces that will hold up your compliance program is, what do you call like due diligence, copies of, addresses or copies of statements, having the billing address, having the home address, having all this just information. Information's great. And again, coming at this from, a data, my data career, and especially as a reporting person, a reporting engineer, numbers are great, but what are you going to do about them? What are you looking for?
You mean like the numbers on a financial statement, stuff like that?
Exactly. Like I can produce a rate, I can produce a, these, percentage of these transactions are international or something. The number of these transactions are, wire transfers to a particular, maybe like high-risk jurisdiction.
But see, then that
what
might
does it
be
mean?
great due diligence for a bank.
Yeah.
But would it be a good due diligence requirement and for the lawyer who's trying to onboard a new client or risk assess their new client? So what you just said, it was if I was a bank compliance officer and I wanted a report that said, I want to look at all of our customers that have more than 20% international wire transfers so we can kind of monitor them more frequently or something like that. That's great. So this is kind of, again, just what I want to say with the risk-based approach. Every company that is applying AML compliance has AML compliance regulations will have a different approach to compliance. That is, and then kind of taking it back, the conversation back to technology. That is what you also need to look at whenever you are looking at a compliance-driven system to purchase or buy, is can you apply a risk-based approach to that system?
And you mentioning the banks, yes, the ACAMS materials is heavily on banks, right? On financial institutions. But really what I was kind of getting at is, what are you going to do about those numbers? It's great to collect them. It's great to present them. But what do they mean? What are they? What impacts do they have? Okay, so you have
on your risk assessment of the customer or client.
Well, just in general, it's really more of a hypothetical thing. But that's why the collection and the super. It's not just due diligence, right? You have to take the due diligence into effect when you do your risk assessment. It's not just about the collection of those things. It's about assessing the risk of those numbers.
Yeah.
What does it mean if a client has 10%, international wire? Do they operate internationally? Great.
Maybe that's
perfectly normal and
exactly.
expected.
Yeah.
Are they a local business cupcake shop and they're sending $10,000 a month to?
That doesn't make sense. That's just a red flag. Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of where I think ACAMS really was helpful for me, especially. Again, I kind of knew what it was, right? Very generally, what money laundering is, why it's bad, but then. And I think that's where, I think the compliance program has kind of evolved to from, the last, 10, 20 years, is it's not just the collection of things. It's not just the checking of the boxes and the collection of due diligence. It's applying the risk-based approach, doing the assessment, figuring out what those things mean. Because when they're teaching you, chapter 1 of this big old folder over here, is the methodologies and then the red flags. What are you actually looking for? Because it's great to collect those things, but you need to know, especially if this is your responsibility, if your board of directors, this ultimately falls down on you, and if you're the compliance officer, you need to know what those things actually mean. What needs to jump out at you when you're looking at the due diligence, when you're onboarding a client. And again, that's why having the transaction monitoring, that's why having screening solutions are just as important as having a sound and safe due diligence system. Or due diligence process.
Yeah, that you can configure to make sure it's meeting your needs and not
your
the
exact
bank's needs.
Yeah.
I do have a story. Whenever I first got into compliance, whoever my predecessor had rolled out across the firm a particular training video that everybody was required to watch. And this is before I had sat, compliance exams or anything like that. And I can remember sitting it and I kept failing it. And I couldn't understand why I kept failing it until it occurred to me that this training solution was designed to be taken by like a teller at a bank.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I'm a so I'm working at a law firm, and I was thinking it in terms of a law firm, and it was like, this doesn't make any sense.
And that's a big thing. Like, I mean, that's another one of the pillars is the training. It's not one of the lines of defense, right? But it is one of the pillars of a sound and safe and robust compliance system or compliance program is the training of your people. And the thing that you get tested on when you take the ACAMS exam, and it is the thing that you get told repeatedly in the training, it's something that you read all the time, is that it has to be tailored and specific to the role and the function of the person and the firm. 100%.
You cannot expect that. No. You cannot just roll out a general money laundering awareness training to everybody in your company and assume that, okay, I've ticked the box, which sadly is what I used to do. Yeah. I used to give the same training to everybody. And then of course, but that was acceptable back then. It is no longer acceptable.
And it's kind of that scaling at every level. The level of scrutiny with which you look at a client is individual. The level of training that a person will get is individual. The level of risk appetite of what their program is going to look like is individual to the firm at every level within a regulated industry, regulated company, organization, whatever. At every point in that process, it has to be custom, configurable, specific to that component. Yeah. Or otherwise it just doesn't make sense.
And when
you
said custom, so you said custom just now. Yeah. I don't like the word custom.
It's wrong. You're right. It's wrong.
The reason why I don't like custom is because we being a SaaS product, people will go, oh, well, can I customize it as I need? And I've learned the hard way. No. You can. You can configure some settings as you need. But you can't go say, hey, and I use the example that, if suddenly you decide that you want to start collecting all your customers' eye color. Yeah. And you go, Kimberly, we need a new field that captures eye color.
Customize this.
Add it to me, today. I'm going to go, no, that is not a regulatory requirement. Yes. You don't need it. Yeah. Or I might say, why are you needing it? And then of course I'll ask, is are other people needing this too? But I'll say, if you come to me and just say, hey, I want to start collecting eye color because I think that's key for identification purposes, I'm going to go, no, that's not. You can go figure that one out. Yeah. Another way.
You do that. Put it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, put it in an Excel spreadsheet.
We're not doing that.
But no, it's one of those situations that whenever, again, with the systems that you do acquire or you're using, be able to change them too. Yeah. Okay. So that is also, you can't just have a system and that's what it is and that's what you got for the next 5 years. No. Because what we mentioned in the last episode, technology is changing so fast and there's so many tools. You've got to be able to adjust. And I say technology is changing, but also the compliance environment is changing so drastically. An example of that I can possibly give, I'd say probably in the past year, is being able to assess more about proliferation financing. Yeah. So can you show in your system that you have considered proliferation financing risk for your clients or customers?
And that's, I think, well, not and that, but the thing we said before, the proliferation financing. I think, again, if I was to stand on the mountain and scream it from the rooftops, that's the message is just because it's risk, that's like the new wording. You're right. It's not custom. It is a risk-based approach. Like, you're not checking off a box for risk. Like, don't take that prior mindset of compliance. I just need to check those boxes and be like, okay, well now it's just risk-based. I just need to check the box of risk-based approach. That's still not it. You need to actually embody it.
Embody it, yes.
It is not something that you can just finish and do and comply
And it needs
with,
to be part that whole risk-based approach needs to be part of your compliance procedures too.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I am saying this now because about 15, 20 years ago, I used to hate the phrase, well, it depends.
Yes, yeah.
And
that's the truth.
But
It does
the
depend.
truth is, it does depend.
Yeah.
If you are onboarding a certain client who kind of falls outside of these parameters, it does depend.
Their risk will depend.
Their risk will depend,
Yeah.
and of course, what you get to mitigate that risk will depend. And so I do kind of laugh at myself now at what I've learned. And again, I apologize to anybody in my past where I used to go, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
We need to have more, set procedures. And you can, don't get me wrong, you can still have some set procedures, but you need to give those procedures and the person who's applying them some wiggle room. Otherwise, you are backing yourself up against a wall.
Yeah. It's an approach.
Yeah,
It's a methodology. It's not an end all be all.
Right.
It's not something you're going to roll out and spin up. And because that's something that, again, I did it my consulting career, was we were spinning up essentially the same thing. And that is something that I felt some kind of friction with, is that the reason why we kept getting off track, we had issues with scope creep, and we had issues with, coming under or going over the budget or coming under the deliverables, is that we were trying to take the same route every time with different customers. And that's what it is. Yes, it wasn't risk, but it was something that we were creating and building and doing together that was going to serve a function that was trying to help them. Because that's what this is, right? A risk-based approach, a configurable system that is going to be implemented, again, at a firm, at an industry level, firm, portfolio, customer level. It's designed to help both people. People, from the firm's point of view, it's to protect the firm and the client. That's why they're saying, like, it'll depend. You can't just give like a straightforward, like, hey, fill out this form. We only need these 10 things, and it'll never change. It will change, obviously, because risk changes and it's evolving and adapting. And again, kind of what you mentioned earlier with the proliferation financing, that's kind of the new big risk.
Focus.
Yeah. And it's incredibly risky. And then from the other side, from the client or customer side, yes, I understand that it's frustrating to have to hand over this information and you don't exactly know. When I worked with this other firm, it was different. But when now that their business has changed, or the industry or the regulatory environment has changed, the requirements are going to change. The way that a compliance officer or a whole firm or a whole industry approach their compliance and their risk is going to be different from one to the other, and then over time as well. And it's, again, to a relationship, the same as what we were talking about last time. It's to help protect each other and keep each other safe.
And not just each other, but then also our financial system.
And then everybody else.
Our
and then
global
it ripples
financial
out.
system.
Right.
Yeah. And the, like I said, that greater good, so to speak.
And that's why I think proliferation financing is really on people's minds now, is that we're suddenly entering like a new era of risk.
Huge era of risk. That is a very real risk for everybody. And for those who don't know what proliferation financing is, it is it's
the financing of mass weapons
the
weapons
components of that can be used for weapons of mass destruction. Right. So, of course, with the global events the way they are, it's a much bigger risk. It's things everything from dirty bombs to nuclear missiles, and wanting to make sure. What's the other one? Like the chemical warfare as well. Making sure that those components that can be used for those cannot be purchased via whatever transaction you're helping your customer with. So that's kind of a focus that's going on now, and of course in 2 years' time it might be something else, and so we're always looking for making sure that the system can be adjusted and configured and tweaked, or not tweaked. That's again another word I don't like, but that it
can keep up with you.
That it can keep up with the demands that you are having to keep up with. And of course, I'll use the Russia invasion of Ukraine. So, prior to February 2022, a lot of people that we work with, if they had Russian clients, they were kind of more in the medium risk range. And of course, after that, February 2022, they then had to start risk rating Russia, Belarus, Ukraine as higher risk because there's more room for, again, that corruption. People could be taking advantage of others. Then you had a lot more with refugees crossing border. You had more sex trafficking and crimes going on. So again, global events can trigger where your focus is, and you then have to sometimes re-risk your clients.
You should be.
Yeah.
You're right.
You
Yeah.
definitely should be.
Yeah.
And so back in and I'll use the example of, I can't remember what year it was. I want to say 2008, 2009. It was the Arab Spring. And Mubarak had been the president of Egypt for 30 years. And he got deposed. They had riots, and he was deposed, and a whole new government came in. So I can remember having to go through all of our files, all of the customers that I was responsible for, and trying to find any connection to Egypt. Because then we were trying to make sure with this regime change, there is the heightened risk of, again, some corruption, bribery, state-owned assets being stolen, and trying to make sure that we were not in any way assisting anybody who might have that connection to the new government or to the outgoing
Even unintentionally.
Yeah. And so that we weren't assisting unintentionally. So we needed to kind of re-risk all those clients. And it was that experience alone, because that was a manual search. Plus I had to go to our accounting system. I had to go to all the different systems, or different processes or departments at the company at the time to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Like, can you run me a search on this, or can you run me a search on that? And it was days and days and days to run that report and make sure that we didn't have any heightened risk, and then also to re-risk those clients who might now have more power and be politically exposed persons now that there was this new government change. And to me, that was like, this shouldn't take that long. And of course, and that was kind of one of the, kind of like the seeds being germinated for what is now Silo. But that is something else that people do need to think about whenever they are looking at systems, to make sure it can quickly adjust, be configurable to your risk appetite, your risk-based approach, and of course, global events that we don't see coming. I mean, 3 years ago, did anybody see that we would have tanks crossing a border, invading another country?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And now that's a very real thing that's going on in Eastern Europe. So again, some things to think about. And of course, the other kind of mention that we wanted to talk about with this episode is the compliance community. Now, our compliance community is you and me.
Yeah.
But we talk about it constantly, of course, and people that we work with and our customers and our users. We also host the AML Gray Matters webinar. I feel like that has really helped. I think I've had a lot of people reach out about that being a part of, they rely on that to stay informed, and we keep it free. Yep. I know we've had a lot of people say, oh, you should be charging for it. You can make tons of money. I'm like, nope.
Nope.
Why
we do it.
Well, that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to help the compliance community. And the others, also, I do encourage people, reach out to your compliance association. If you don't have a compliance association, go start one. Yeah. Reach out to other compliance officers. Our community,
others need it.
Because others need it too, yeah. So our community are usually, the people that we talk to the most are people who are on their own. They're the compliance officer for an organization. There's no other person who's doing compliance. And so they're usually sitting at that desk trying to do it all by themselves. And if you are one of those people, and you're trying to find both technology solutions, training, you're trying to stay informed, you're trying to stay up to date, you need to get involved with the compliance community, even if that means going and starting your own compliance association. Or if you're not happy with your compliance association, get elected, get on that board, and get involved, very much involved. We need more people getting involved and helping to train. And that's not to say you have to know what you're doing. I didn't know what I was doing when I started a tech company. Sometimes you learn the hard way. But you don't know what you don't know, and you just got to get out there and you got to talk and learn from others and help others learn too.
Yeah.
All right, then. So that is enough for episode 3. And we look forward to having you back for episode 4 of Comply or Die. Thank you very much, Charlotte.
See you next time.
See you next time.